Hi everyone and welcome to the Cyber Pulse podcast. I'm your host Sheikh Al Thani, and today we're diving into an episode that affects almost everyone who has ever been online. Before I get into the details of that episode, I just want to share an accomplishment. Finally, a woman decided to join my podcast. She volunteered and said that she's ready to speak. So I'm very happy of that accomplishment because I've been struggling to get the ladies to speak their mind. Now, with that being said, no disrespect to all the gentlemen out there. I truly value and appreciate your input, me with my podcast, and we definitely learn a lot from you, and we will continue to do so. With that being said, today's podcast is about something that almost everyone goes through online. I want you to imagine something. You receive a message from someone you trust, someone compliments you out of nowhere, or someone you've been talking to for months suddenly disappears without a reason. It sounds familiar, right? Today, we're not just talking about online scams or ghosting, catfishing, or cyberbullying as separate things. We're going deeper. We are going into the psychology behind them, the human behavior, the emotions, the patterns, and why these experiences keep happening across the digital world. And to explore all this with me, I'm joined by Fakriya, who doesn't have a technical background, but she's a journalist and she has a lot of interest when it comes to social media. Now, I feel like I'm not being fair with my introduction. So, Fakriya, please, can you do me the honors of introducing yourself to the audience?
Sure. Thank you so much, Sheikha. It's such a delight for me to tune in and join in this conversation. So, my name is Fakriya Mohammed. My educational background is in the study of religions. A lot of people assume that that means I can quote verses from every scripture and things like this, but that's more on the theology side. My discipline was looking at the impact of religion on society. So whether it's reform movements within society where religion was used as the anchor for sparking reform, even looking at governments' policies, how sometimes religion can be that rallying point for change and impact within a society. And of course, also looking at violence as well. Non-state actors wanting to, shall I say, counteract governments. What's so interesting is people often assume that religion is the motivating factor.
True.
And I find that religion usually is what bands people together. It's the glue that brings people together, but it always goes back to power, acquiring maybe land. So it's such a fascinating discipline.
I think sometimes people tie things to religion, but in reality, it's what they really want to do. But they will never say that this is our intention. They'll just say, we believe that this is the right thing to do. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. There have been so many religious movements, whether, across religious traditions. Maybe they will call for a rejection of modernity, of, modern day living. But then when you look at the leaders of these movements, they enjoy all the benefits of modern life. They are very active on social media. You will see them driving modern cars. You will see them wearing, Rolex watches. They're enjoying the fruits of modern day life. So even though they preach against modernity using religion as an excuse, when you really look at their methods of gaining followers, of gaining support for their movement, most often they are benefiting from all the perks. So it's so fascinating to really deconstruct a lot of the ways religion is used and misused by people in authority.
True, I resonate when it comes to that. I kind of agree with what you're saying. So, Fakhriya, what emotion do you think becomes stronger when people go online, and why does that happen?
This is such an in-depth question. I see digital spaces as being such a powerful platform to amplify our identity. A person can create an entire profile, or maybe even more than one profile, where they're using coded language, where they're using, visual audio content that is curated and signaling what they stand for and who they are. And I think this exists because the dominant emotion here is that call, is that sense of wanting to belong, that emotion of belonging.
I never thought of it that way, but do you think people feel like they belong in an online community better than they belong in a community that's part of the real world?
There are only so many ways we can express ourselves offline.
Okay.
I could really, I'm restricted in how I can dress. I'm restricted in how I can accessorize my dressing. But online, there's identity can be so dynamic. Like I said, one person can have multiple profiles. They can join multiple communities. They can follow multiple trending topics that can constantly reshape who they are. And that's maybe something we don't have access to in the real world, or it's not so easy to access in the real world. So I think, and the glue that, again, binds a lot of people together is that wanting to be recognized, is that want to express the multiple aspects of their personality, as well as also seeking that validation as well. So maybe it is slightly easier to feel that sense of connection online because the online spaces are so dynamic.
Interesting. I've never thought of that this way, so thank you for stating this. I'm gonna watch out in terms of how I act online now. Fakriya, have you ever seen someone act very different online, like compared to their real life? And why do you think they caused that change?
Yeah, I think, again, there's more room to be experimental online. A person can change their hair color, with a digital avatar multiple times, maybe even one day, and the avatar will never grow roots. The hair will never grow roots. It will always be, if a person chooses green, the hair will always be green. If a person chooses yellow, it will always be yellow hair. In my case, if I dye my hair, the roots will start coming back. So there's that dynamic nature to your persona online. There's that ability to experiment so rapidly within such a short space of time. So I guess that, again, there's that ease to be able to do so. So for sure, I have seen, a person who's perhaps more vocal about their sense of style, or maybe even their views on society online that they're maybe not able to do offline. I think also here, there are also algorithms at play. A person's behavior can be rewarded online if it's in favor of the algorithm. So there are so many, reasons why a person's persona might differ online than who they are offline.
When you say that, like, their act or behavior can be rewarded, what do you mean by that?
Sure. I mean, if an algorithm is maybe favoring a trending topic, and maybe a person is aligning with that trend, whether it be, a TikTok dance move, or whether it be a particular tag or a topic of conversation, a person might be motivated to now want to align with that trend.
Is it just for the fame or the followers, or is it because they think they'll be part of that trending group?
A lot of people do seek virality. A lot of people do want to have their moment online, be seen online. Perhaps they're in a position in a society where maybe for whatever reason they're part of a group, or even gender sometimes restricts a person's ability to be seen.
True.
So like I was saying, ability to gain followers, ability to gain a viral moment, for some people it might really be important for them.
Interesting perspective. Fakriya, online scams don't work because people are not smart. They work because scammers understand emotions. If scammers had no technology, do you think they could still manipulate people just through human behavior? And why do you think that is?
I think what makes the scammer successful is they're not necessarily exploiting the device or the technology. They're exploiting the person. Like you're saying, if the person's awareness is low, if their digital know-how is low, the scammer is able to exploit that. Scammers have such sharp insights into human behavior. A scammer is never going to say outright, send me 5,000 riyal or send me your QID.
True.
They will develop that trust. They will mirror a person's interests, maybe even take on, like we're saying, take on a persona of a group that the victim identifies with, or maybe even adopt the identity of someone in authority. Psychology tells us that a person is more likely to conform if they perceive the other person to be within a state of authority. And then, of course, the scammer is able to create that urgency either through a fake connection or through a fake sense of authority. And this is what makes it effective, that understanding of human emotion, that need for for connection, for belonging, for validation. The technology is just there to amplify their reach, but the tactics are still very grounded in the human psyche, human behavior. A scammer probably is one of the best behavioral psychologists you will find in the world. It's just unfortunate they use their skills, their insights for the wrong reasons.
To be honest, I've never seen it that way. I always tied scams to technology, but you opened my mind to a different angle here. So thank you for that.
I mean, because a scammer will put in the time. They will put in the time to get to know the victim, what makes the victim tick. And all this information is so readily available. A person's tweets from even 10 years ago, a person can scroll that far back. A person's posting, their digital footprint, all of this is readily accessible for a scammer to exploit. And I think this is a lot of what contributes to a scam being successful.
Honestly, interesting perspective. I never thought about it that way. I've always said scammers are successful because they know how to use technology and because they understand A, B, and C. But now you've kind of explained the emotional aspect when it comes to this, and this resonates with a lot of people because technology is not behind emotion. We are the emotional creatures here.
Exactly.
So, Fakriya, which emotional state, like is it stress, loneliness, or excitement, that makes people easiest to influence?
This is such a difficult question to answer. I think each individual emotion that you mentioned, they each have the potential to lower our ability to critically look at a situation and make an informed decision. All three emotional states, whether it's stress, loneliness, excitement, can make a person more impressionable. But I think the real vulnerability is when these emotional states overlap. The combination of being stressed and then lonely and then maybe excited because, the nature, the speed of how something can develop online, this combination creates the perfect someone to take advantage. And I think this is why scammers often target people when they're overwhelmed, when they're isolated, when emotions are high.
Interesting. Sometimes I feel like they target people who look for or seek a connection. It could be any type of connection, but they're looking to speak their mind or form a new type of friendship. That sense of connectivity that makes them a target.
Absolutely. And especially, online, I would say low investment actions online appear so much larger than they actually are. Like an instant reply or instantly liking a post. It can make a person feel, wow, this person is really investing in me, really wanting to connect with me, really wanting to be friends with me. It can really cloud a person's judgment, as you say, with someone who maybe is lonely. And because of that loneliness, maybe they're stressed as well.
True.
The digital spaces can move really quickly, but I think really taking a middle ground, maybe even taking time to slowly analyze really critically, it can really do a person good, especially when avoiding being scammed. And a scam doesn't necessarily have to be with money. It can be a scam with a person's time. It can be a scam with a person's resources, scam with a person's kindness.
True. A scam is a scam. It doesn't have to be just about money, just like you said. It can be through a person's emotions as well. Like you scam someone that you're invested, but in reality you're not.
Exactly.
That takes me to my next question, to be honest. Why do people sometimes trust strangers online faster than they trust people they know in real life?
It's interesting. You would think with someone that you don't know, someone that you have no context with, you would be more cautious.
True.
But like you're saying, what you see online is that really rapid sense of trust, lowering of judgment. And I think, again, this goes back to the digital persona that a person presents. A person will present a very selective lens about who they are. So all a person has to work with is that snapshot. So going back to where we started our conversation about emotions that drive actions on the digital space, a lot of those feelings about wanting to connect, wanting to establish community. I guess it's not uncommon for a person to now, maybe within that state of perhaps clouded judgment, they now fill in the blanks about who the person is, or maybe who they even want that person to be. If they want that person to be someone who will, lower their loneliness and lower their stress, maybe they will project that onto the person while maybe not necessarily paying attention to who they actually are.
Do you think just because they want it, they will assume that it's true?
I think so. I think you do see this. I think you do see this a lot when emotions are high, and perhaps, again, there are also other emotional factors that are involved. I think it can be very easy for a person to get caught up in that rush, in that rapid speed of interactions that we see online. And I think also sometimes, the stakes are kind of low online as well.
Yeah.
If things go wrong, you can block a person with the click of a button. So the social consequences are also quite low. There's that shield, there's that knowledge that, well, if I no longer want to interact with this person, I can delete them from my life with the click of a button.
But deleting someone, like because you're angry or upset or sad over it, will always make you undelete them at some point of your life for a time.
Yeah. This is such a funny phenomenon. Someone who, I'm sure you've experienced this as well, perhaps, maybe even if it was just someone you wanted to connect with for a collaboration or an opportunity or something, and somehow they end up, even if it's maybe on another platform.
True.
It's insane. They block you on one platform, but then they spring up again on another platform.
It's awkward in a way, but it is what it is.
Absolutely.
So now moving on to ghosting, I think a lot of people get ghosted and they become overly emotional about. So ghosting has become one of the most common online behaviors, and it says a lot about how people deal with discomfort. So is the internet making it too easy for people to avoid responsibility? Would ghosting happen this much in real life?
I feel like ghosting isn't necessarily something new. I think the internet just maybe makes it more efficient. As you're mentioning, the barriers of accountability and responsibility are so much more lowered online than offline. The digital space just amplifies and exaggerates behaviors that we already know to exist. A person can just disappear, without a trace.
True.
With the click of a button. They're shielding themselves from confrontation, from judgment about their behavior. And as we know, with face-to-face interactions, the demand for accountability, the demand for responsibility is so much higher. And I guess we also have to understand perhaps not everyone is so emotionally intelligent or emotionally mature to share why, to explain their behavior, and opt to just vanish, disappear without a trace online. And like we're saying, blocking, like we're saying, deleting profiles, and all of this so much more efficient, so much easier for someone who wants to ghost.
True, but I feel like we're giving this too much credibility. I'm gonna be kind of blunt and honest here. In real life, if we don't want to comfort one another, we would just avoid one another. And somehow that's okay. How come when it's online, they'll call it ghosting? It's not really ghosting, it's just that some people are not confrontational. So they'll end up blocking you or not having this conversation with you. But in reality, you want that validation, you want that closure. But we all have different perspectives and different mindsets. Sometimes it's easier for a person to block than to have the conversation.
Which is unfortunate. I feel so many opportunities are missed when conversation isn't had. I guess, like you're saying, at the extreme end, there would be the blocking, which completely ends, to a large extent, ends the ability to connect and the ability to interact. Slightly more challenging, I guess, offline if you're met with someone that you've been
true it's awkward
diving on the digital space, like you're saying, it can get quite awkward, especially perhaps if this is someone who's in close proximity, whether you work in the same industry as that person, with that person, or even in the same office.
It gets uncomfortable, but a lot of people feel like this is something that they did, so it ends up feeling personal, when in reality this action is not personal and it shouldn't really reflect you. It reflects them and their actions. So it's something that they have to deal with. It's not something that you have to fix. You know what I mean?
This is such a good point. We can only control what we can control. Like you're saying, we cannot control someone else's choices, someone else's decisions. Like you're saying, a person's choice is on them. You can only plant the seed, and then you let life take its its course from there.
Exactly. So why does silence hurt more than hearing the truth? What is the mind trying to fill in here when something like this takes place?
I feel like we're programmed almost to be afraid of uncertainty. A lot of how our species has survived, fearing of danger, fearing the unknown. So this perhaps goes back to our primal instinct for survival. I guess when we don't get the answer that we want, or the answer we get is unclear, our mind is searching, and typically it will search for the worst case scenario or build an imagined meaning into things that maybe aren't even there. A hard truth can sting, but it gives someone something tangible to work with and makes it easier, I think, to move on from. With silence, there's nothing. You're just left with a million what ifs. And usually within that space, our brain isn't going to paint a rosy picture of the outcome.
It's usually the worst. Rather than something great and bubbly, it's going to be something dreadful.
Absolutely. I would love to see a survey of people who have admitted to ghosting, that why they choose that option, especially like we're having this conversation where it induces stress in a person. I would really love to hear the insights of a ghoster, why they chose that option instead of, even if it was just a short message or a short phone call, why they chose to just disappear.
That would be a good episode. For me personally, I've never done that, but I can truthfully state that as an action, I don't like it. So I would never do it to a person because I know how it feels. I would rather have the conversation and state my truth than completely cut off someone. So I treat people the way that I wish to be treated.
Absolutely. Especially, we don't know what tomorrow brings. That person that maybe a person is ghosting, maybe they will need that person in the future.
I have a feeling that they always come back in some way or another. Like they might disappear, but then they'll come back, but you might not necessarily want that closure anymore. So Fakhriya, catfishing shows how far people can go to feel seen or accepted or to feel in control at some cases. Do people create fake identities to deceive others or to escape themselves?
I think I was in secondary school when the Catfish documentary and Catfish, the TV show, aired on MTV. It took everyone by storm. At the time it finally put a word to, I guess,
the action.
Exactly. And in the case of the lady that was catfishing him, who had been catfishing him for a long time, when they finally tracked her down, there really were challenges in her everyday life. So I think with this question, I think the lines between deception and escapism, it's so easy for that to become blurred. Maybe it can start off as an outlet to escape, an outlet to create a persona, to connect with people, engage in conversations, to switch off from the realities of their offline real world life, even if it's just for an hour, and then they're unable to connect in the way that they would like to, but they are able to do so with their online persona.
Do you think sometimes this is a cry out for help if it gets to that extent?
Absolutely. I think without limits, a person, bid to want to escape, to want to flee from parts of themselves. Definitely the persona that they created can be abused and misused and perhaps create a scenario where, they are seeking that ability to connect, to be able to, again, this goes back to our earlier conversation about stress, loneliness, anxieties, etc. Maybe they're not comfortable being so honest about what they're going through as themselves, but it's easy for them to speak about their struggles through the hidden identity, through acting as a persona.
True. Fakhriya, why do emotional connections form so quickly online, sometimes faster than in person or in real life?
Yeah, I mean, we have terms like future faking, you have terms like breadcrumbing, digital space, instant likes, instant messaging, all these digital interactions really can make a person feel that they are connecting with a person. And of course, there's that instant dopamine hit. Offline, you typically will take more time. You're meeting with the person, you're interacting with them face to face. Perhaps you're seeing aspects of their character, of their personality, maybe even their points of view that you don't really like. But all that is hidden online through the barrier of the screen. There's also a false sense of closeness that's created because of how quickly, quote unquote, investment may seem in in a digital space, I always question, whether the speed of our digital interactions, does it go beyond what we're actually able to handle? I think it can be very easy to get caught up in the digital rush of connections.
Interesting. So if I asked you to name like one sign that would be considered as a warning to people that they are being catfished, what would that sign be?
If you're genuine, if you tell the truth, you don't have to have a good memory. If someone asks me something about myself on Sunday, on Friday, I would be able to give the same answer because I'm just telling. Exactly. I think it's very easy to create a false persona online, but I think the cracks will always reveal eventually. If someone is portraying themselves to be part of a certain culture, part of a certain way, their digital footprint, i.e., the content that they're liking, the content that they're resharing doesn't match at all. It's a very clear sign that something here isn't right. Someone who's genuine, there will be that coherence across their words, across their actions, across their digital footprint.
True.
When you start to now see discrepancies, for me, that's always a warning sign.
Interesting. But that's good advice because a lot of people tend to ignore that. They see it, but they ignore it. So Fakriya, cyberbullying isn't just about the attack, it's about the emotions behind it and the environment that allows it. Do bullies behave that way online because they feel invisible or because they finally feel noticed online?
It's so interesting that you mentioned visibility. For many bullies, they may choose to hide under the cover of anonymity.
True.
Here we also have to factor in the non-human component as well. When individuals deploy bots, deploy robots to do their dirty work for them. It's so complex.
But why do you think they'd go to that extent? Is it hate? Is it jealousy? What is it that would allow a person or a group to flee to that extent of bullying?
I think, especially for young people, it's very easy to be reactionary rather than content word. And especially online, words can be so easily taken out of context. Words can be so easily misread. There have been so many cases I've heard of that have really turned so ugly because of this misunderstanding. People getting hurt on the online space is even worse when it goes offline.
True.
It's difficult, but I think conversations around these do need to be had. Our young people do need to, especially since our technologies are developing so rapidly. And yes, our young people are masters of this technology, but also there's the social element as well. That does need attention. That does need care, just to safeguard our young people, both from being bullied as well as becoming bullies themselves. I don't want to infantilize, but someone may not be aware that constantly spamming a person or making cruel jokes under a person's content can have really lasting impacts on that person. When you're on the digital space and you want to be seen, and someone is making it difficult for you to be seen because of their words, because of how they're interacting, it can really be difficult. And for our young people, being seen online is so important. So I think it's such a complex landscape.
I agree it is, but awareness plays a big role in this, and sometimes being aware of your rights also help. And I think a lot of us are not aware of their safety when it comes to online use and their validation also.
Now, locally, the government is really picking up on this. We're seeing more campaigns. The government saying, really and truly, government entities will never phone you, will never FaceTime you, asking you for your QID. Will never send you a text asking you to send money for matraj. I know countless people who have received these phone calls, received these FaceTimes, and it's encouraging. I think it's encouraging that the state, the government is paying attention to this.
So why does negativity, in your opinion, spread faster online than kindness does?
It's unfortunate that is the case, because on the other side of a viral, unpleasant moment is a person who's dealing with that unpleasant moment.
True. Interesting perspective.
Yeah, I mean, there's meme culture, a person who maybe was the victim of, an unkind and unpleasant interaction, complaining or protesting will be turned into a meme. Why that is part of online culture, for me, it's a puzzlement. It really is a puzzlement. And again, I think a lot of the social contracts that we have in person, courtesy, consideration, kindness, it's diminished on the digital space. Again, because there's the cloak of anonymity, the strength of social contracts, is diminished online. So I think that makes it easy for people who own blogs, people who run platforms to then take advantage of these negative moments, turn it into a meme.
True, I've never seen it that way, but it's an interesting perspective for sure. What's one effective way someone can protect their mental health if they become a target?
It's really hard. I think especially intergenerationally, maybe young people might feel older generations might not necessarily understand.
True.
Advice like just, switch off your phone, just block the person, just don't go on Instagram. Really, for young people, it doesn't resonate at all because that's such a huge part of their social life. I think the older generation does need to be put up to speed with what the digital spaces are like or can be like potentially. For young people, it's so important. So it's not a case of just switching off. That's the reality. There is no switch off. A lot of social interaction is heavily concentrated in the digital space. So I think if awareness amongst older generations can be enhanced, that would be, the conversations then would be so much more fruitful because there would be that mutual understanding.
True.
And with understanding, older generations would be able to help and would be able to better engage with the conversation.
True. I resonate when it comes to that. It's difficult, but if there is a mutual understanding, a lot of things can be fixed.
For the young people themselves, the courage it takes as a young person to say, actually, I am struggling. Actually, this isn't okay. Actually, I am having a difficult time. It really does take courage for a young person. There are so many pressures of life, whether it's school life, performing academically, a misunderstanding, and then keeping up with, out of school activities. There's a lot that does go on in the young person's life. And I think sometimes maybe we don't give them enough credit. Maybe it is sometimes easy to miss, signs of struggle. For young people, I definitely would encourage being bold to speak to someone that they trust. A burden shared is a burden halved. And, a situation might seem difficult. Unfortunately, we do hear cases of young people who they are the victims of online bullying and they, maybe they harm themselves or even worse.
True.
Which is, it's heartbreaking. So I encourage young people to have the courage to speak out. And for every problem, there is always a solution.
Thank you for stating that. You gave good advice. I wish someone could have told me that when I was a teenager who was exposed to social media and I just didn't know what to do with it. So,
and I mean, because our generation, we were the first ones,
True.
We were the first ones to have, mobile phones as young ages, the first to have like social media pages at a young age. So it's a learning. It's a learning for everyone, but it's important to recognize that the challenges are there, even though these platforms, these new technologies are so helpful, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's social life, but there also does need to be attention taken to the challenges.
So, Fakriya, we discussed a lot of things in terms of catfishing and in terms of being ghosted and in terms of cyberbullying as well. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we kind of conclude things?
I think we've covered quite a lot. And my goal with our conversation, I hope that, or the two of us, our discussion, it will inspire more people to dig deep into the topics that we've covered. And hopefully this can contribute to some of the solutions to the challenges that we have tried to unpack here. I think for me, the middle ground is always the best ground, everything in moderation.
So, Fakriya, is there anyone else you'd like to see join or be part of the Cyber Pulse podcast?
Ooh, wow, that's such a good question. I mean, there is someone I have in mind. I'm sure you've heard of her too. She's the Director of Digital Innovation at the Communications Ministry. I'm sure you've heard of her, Sheikha.
Is it Iman Al-Kawari?
Yes.
I don't think I can catch Iman, but let's try. Let's try and see. Fakriya,
Especially
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciated this conversation because we covered a lot. And yeah, I hope you'll enjoy the episode.
Oh, Sheikha, thank you so much for this. Usually I'm in your seat. I'm the one who's asking the questions. So for me to now be on the other side and to have had this conversation with you, it's truly been delightful. Thank you so much for this opportunity to have a platform to share my ideas.
Fakriya, truly thank you for this. The conversation was genuine, it was real, and you've shared a lot of insights when it comes to how people operate the way they operate online. And I think a lot of people would resonate with your input and understand why they're being treated a certain way online. So, inshallah, people will enjoy today's episode. To everyone who's listening, thank you for tuning in and for listening. Please stay aware, stay grounded, and stay safe online. And hopefully, I'll see you in the next episode.